good evening. If you are tuning in, you're just going to have to give me a thumbs up as to whether you can hear me or not, because we're trying something a bit new this evening. I'm trying the mic because I've got the heater on. That could be pretty noisy. Hello, I'll let you in, mate, if you jump in the waiting room. Is it a waiting room? I don't actually know. But honoured to have you join us if you do have the Oh, don't know what's going on here. Lou? Hello, mate.
Good evening, how are you?
I'm all right. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, all
Cool.
good. The microphone's working, mate.
Yeah, no, because normally you can't use the two at the same time. Oh, I thought I'd at least give it a go. Hi, Rick. How was Dubai?
Oh, mate, I went with zero expectations and it was everything that I thought it was going to be, if that makes any sense at all. Like,
But in a positive sense?
yeah,
You're all right?
absolutely. It was a lot less influencery than I thought it was going to be. It was nice. It was a lot more expensive than I thought it was going to be too. So, yeah,
I don't
interesting.
know where you went, but I've got a... Hey, Rick, you're all right, mate? That's all right. I'm just about to bore everyone by saying how I have second-hand knowledge of just how expensive things like booze is. So
Yeah.
I'm not a massive boozer, but my friend who goes quite regularly, he says it's nigh on 20 quid a pint.
Yeah, it's
Not that
to be
I'm a
fair,
massive beer drinker.
yeah, I'm sober, so I don't know what it's like in terms of booze, but I mean, even just food and stuff like, mate, the convenience is mad, right? You want a monster to your door, you order it on Deliveroo, it's there within like 5 minutes.
How
It's
much that set you back?
yeah,
Yeah, that's. Thank you, gents, for joining me. I think everyone, hopefully, tuning in understands the premise behind this, but essentially being, I don't know, it's like the change you want to see. You know, we do a lot of speaking about strength in speaking, but what does that look like in action? I think people are under probably the premise that I know everyone I get to come on here really, really well, which I don't, which is, again, in its essence, what this is supposed to be about, just opening up candid conversations, geezers sometimes being entirely on geezer, and talking stuff out. How are you both, Joe and Rick?
I'll let Joe go first. Go on, son.
I'm all right. I enjoy listening, so it's quite nice to just be part of it. It's good.
For
Yeah, thanks for
me,
reaching out as well.
for me, I'm all right. I think we're all okay. It's a good Wednesday, I think, this week.
Think,
Done a bit of training.
yeah,
Feels good in autumn. Everyone loves autumn. Come on, it's favourite time of
I
year.
do. Not everyone does though. I
Do they
mean,
not?
I'm part reptilian, so anything that's a bit colder, I genuinely don't get on with. But we're going with it. I like it, the prettiness of it at least.
Definitely. Got sunshine. Well, the thing is, though, is the favourite thing about this time of year is in summer, you see, like it's absolutely like boiling hot and stuff, and you build so many expectations around going on holidays, having the best time and time off and make the most of it. Autumn, outdoors, beautiful. You can wear any clothes you want. You're never too hot. You can train indoors. You can train outdoors. You've got the festive thing that's coming towards you. That feels pretty mint. I just think it's the best season. I feel really good this time of year.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. God, we're not going to descend into weather chat just yet.
I'm
Come on, we've got plenty to talk
old,
about.
mate. I am old, mate.
How many years young are you?
I'm 38. I'm 39 in February. It weirds me out a
Oh,
little bit because I feel like I really am now
congratulations as
approaching
well.
40.
Minor detail, I've got to congratulate you in person because you are now a husband to be.
Yeah, I got engaged last week. Thanks very much. Yeah, easiest decision I've ever made. I can't even say it was a decision, to be honest. You know what I mean? I can't say it was a decision. My friends, many years ago, my friends told me like that cliche of "you'll just know," and I just shrugged it off, thinking he doesn't really have an answer for what that would be like. And I'd had previous girlfriends, and I was waiting for a moment where that would click, and it didn't. And I thought the problem was probably with me there. And then on this occasion with Sky, it was just like he said. He said, "You will just know." And I was like, well, I can't believe that's true, but it is. So
Yeah,
it doesn't help anybody. That advice just helps nobody.
I think it does. I think it does actually, because I think in the realms of kind of what we speak about is we're exposed to so many societal pressures and expectations that are often based on other people's beliefs and understandings. Because interestingly, I had this conversation with Sky earlier because we touched on this subject a little bit. And I've been with my wife a long time, and the time when I wanted to we both had the conversation. We always wanted to get married, but in honesty, and I mentioned this at the very start of our relationship, is my parents were divorced and married to each other twice.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
I didn't believe in marriage. at all when we first got together. And then you go through those years, formative wise in your relationship, and you get all the expectational, so when you're going to do it, when's it going to be, and then you get engaged, and it's, so when's the wedding, and then when you get married, by the way, this should never be a question that anyone asks. Are you going to have kids? Are you thinking, like, no, that's no one else's business. But all of these goalposts are constantly set by other people. And it's not until, I guess, you get this inner awareness and this inner discernment, you're like, hang on, is that actually, does that make me happy? Or is that based on what other people want?
As a conversational point, I think this is something I'd ask you all. But for me, previously, I've been in relationships where I've wanted to feel that way. I've wanted to feel like this is the relationship, is the one. I've wanted to feel like I was moving towards, like, you know, a serious relationship, marriage, and all those kind of things. And I think, fortunately, something did hold me back. But I hold, like, no grudges for any of these people that have been married before because they've made that mistake. I think it's you want to be in such a position that these things are happening to you and that maturity is showing through, and it's going to be the one forever, I think, in so many ways. So I think the idea of being patient and waiting, and, like, as I say, when my friend said to me, you'll just know, that didn't feel helpful, all as true as it is. But I'm glad that in some ways I have waited for that feeling for it to come along. You know, I kind of trusted him on that front. But I feel like I've had relationships before where, as I say, like, the desire to be in a stable relationship, the desire to be in something long term has been very powerful, and that kind of pushes you itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. I've my mum and dad were like each other's first girlfriend and boyfriend at like 15, 16 years old at school, married. So I've always had that to look up to. They're still very happily married now. So that was always what I was looking for. It's not what I got.
No.
Well, I went to university. I got into like partying and DJing and pretty much went off the other end of the spectrum with it. I then met somebody. We spent nearly 9 years together, got engaged 7 years in, and just drifted apart. Like, just gradually changed, grew apart. There was nothing, no major like issue, no major throwing plates at each other and shit like that. It was just, we just grew apart and decided to call it off and went our separate ways amicably. So I do agree that you know, and I knew, but I also, I firmly believe it's not set in stone. That was my experience of it. So it's, those things are always kind of fluid, right? It changes as you go.
I know that relationship breakdown and separation from children is I think I'm going to bring this proper negative now, but it's the highest linked association, correlation between men who try and hurt themselves.
Oh, that's not negative.
Of all the factors, it just is what it is. And I think that in some ways, like, for me personally, like, exactly like you, I went to university and I kind of partied and had a really good time. And I think that I was searching, I didn't have a lot of stability in terms of, I was a bit of a madhead and a bit of an idiot. And I think that I was trying to find the answers to some of my idiocy in a stable partner. And that's why I wanted it to work. When in reality, I needed to do the work, if you know what I mean. And then the relationship found me, you know. Took me a while to get out of that behavior, you know. It's not just growing up, it's a self-realization that you're your own problem eventually.
I get and with my ex in particular, like, when we got together, we met partying. So we met in that kind of like lifestyle. I was DJing, she used to come to the night, so I was DJing that. And then this was way before I'd even discovered this whole like personal development and self-awareness and stuff like that. So she got me right from what I look back at now as like my worst.
Yeah.
But like went through that kind of transition into discovered personal development and got on that path whilst I was with her. And like I said, it was just nothing. It was nothing. There was no major issue. It was just like, all right, okay. Yeah. It was more career-based things, actually. Like, what I wanted from my life and what I was able to do with coaching just didn't fit with what she wanted to do with her life. And it was a really tough and really easy conversation when we finally sat down to have the conversation. It was almost like, oh, well, that's a weight lifted off both of our shoulders. Probably should have had this conversation a while ago.
Yeah, that's the difficult conversations, though. The challenging conversations, it's easy to understand why people don't have them, but equally, they're going to be hard conversations whenever you have them. It's just whether choose the difficulty level.
If I'd tried to have that conversation 2 or 3 years before, again, me knowing myself, it'd have gone completely differently. I think.
We tend to, like, there's so many facets of this conversation that fascinate me, because we tend to, you know, we're in this, I guess, this day and age where people are a lot bit more self-aware. We're understanding that we don't need to settle. We don't need to base our worth and our success and our happiness on what everyone else expects of us. But also part of that is I wonder whether people are quick to jump out of relationships when actually relationships, like anything that's worth having, takes a bit of work. And I know that's a difficult line to teeter. I just wondered your thoughts on that. Like, where do you distinguish between actually, look, is sometimes relationships are difficult. We need to put in the work because that's ultimately what it is. It's a compromise. It's a collaborative effort. And actually, are people just right? I'm not settling. Therefore, that is possibly one of the reasons why people choose to settle down much later in life, or a lot of people just choose not to settle down.
I think that for me personally, like, in some ways, the book by Jocko Willink, Extreme Ownership, really changed my life in the sense that I'm sure a lot of girlfriends didn't bring like an ideal situation to me, and we needed to work things out and things needed to be said. But ultimately, it's taken me until probably quite late in my life to get to a position where it wouldn't have mattered what they did, frankly. Do you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't in a position to receive any of that. And I think that ultimately I'm maybe, what does Tim Minchin say? If I didn't have you, someone else would do. And I think that that's not related to the woman saying that she's not the special person. It's that he wasn't able to be receptive of it at the right time, So ultimately, there's a bit of chance happening here. You have to be receptive. She has to be receptive. But I think for me, there's a lot of man-child walking around, and as much as we say we're quite self-reflective, I don't think we are reflective of most men, if I'm absolutely honest with you, that I speak to. I don't think they're self-aware. I don't think we try as hard. And I think sometimes the biggest weakness of probably fellas like us is that we can probably be a little bit too self-aware at times, to the point where it maybe even holds us back. But that work has ultimately enabled us to have healthier relationships, at least directly with our partners. And I think that's where it's where you get it back, really. Do you know what I mean? That's where you get the goodness back.
I wonder where that impetus comes from for a lot of people, because also I think it's not the same for everyone, because it's either you make a concerted effort to do that inner work and you can reflect on yourself because that's naturally part of your growth as a human, as an individual, or you're put in a position where you're forced to. Like, actually, hang on a minute, the common denominator here, how you've got those people that identify everyone as red flags. You're like, hang on a minute, if everyone and their behaviour is a red flag all of the time, there's probably an issue closer to home.
Can't be me. Definitely can't be me.
Definitely not me. It's everyone else. Yeah.
There was a period in my life, I talk to Sky about sometimes, a period in my life where I was probably at my most bulletproof. I was incredibly effective, like professionally, and I was incredibly effective in terms of like getting what I wanted done. But I think that was when I was the worst person I've ever been. But things got done so effectively because that level of like selfishness and self-absorbedness means that you just don't take any attention to the critics. You don't take any attention to anybody giving you feedback, and you don't realize that within the critics are people that really care about you, and they're giving you that criticism is in itself support. Now
we've all got blind spots, haven't we?
Yeah, but you can steam. I could steam go through life and think I was fantastic and everyone else is wrong. And as you say, it isn't until you put those things together and you realize you have a common denominator that you just think to yourself, like, I need to do something about this. For me, lockdown was the catalyst for all of that. It gave me total space to ask myself some questions, but also ask them in a way that wasn't as probably uncomfortable as people had to do that outside of lockdown. I had space. I had a little bit of money coming in that was safe. I had peace and calm, and it allowed me to think in such a way without the pressure of work, relationships, etc., to be kind of like, who do you want to be? And I'm kind of grateful for that lockdown period, just in that sense.
It was a little bit different. Like, my kind of entry into it is a little bit different. Like, I had this heart condition come kind of out of nowhere, and I knew that I was going to have to get my head around it. I knew that I was going to have open heart surgery. I knew that I had, albeit small, at 3% chance of like death, but still something that I had to get my head around. So I went into the personal development thing. I saw an advert from Paul Moore at the right time, jumped on that, and just without really knowing what I was getting myself into. And it's almost like once I'd opened that tin of worms, I was like, oh shit, there's a lot of stuff right now I need to focus on. Like, I didn't really know what I was getting into. I was like, if I can find some sort of like stability or some sort of like almost calm in the middle of everything, then I'm willing to give anything a go. As soon as I started to get more into that and go down that path, I was like, right, okay, there is some stuff that I need to work on. I need to address this X, Y, Z, career stuff, family stuff, relationship stuff. And just kind of like, something that I've always done through every walk of life, and it's something that I picked up from my dad, is if I'm doing something, I'm committing to it. So I'm like, I was one of those that I want to know all the knowledge, and I want to know all the issues, and I want to address all of them. And it's a blessing and a curse, I guess, sometimes, that sort of approach to things. But yeah, I got into it with not knowing what I needed to address, and then realised I needed to address loads of stuff. So, I mean, it helped, I guess. Sat here now, so.
Yeah.
Self-professed, it's definitely helped.
Yeah,
I'm sure it has.
yeah.
If it's helped you, it's helped. That's the main thing, you know.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of people's reflections. And something that really spoke to me that you both kind of touched on there is, Rick, you especially said it, when something's working for you, like what is that full interruption? What's the bit that goes, hang on a minute, like it might be working for me? And that resonates with me, I think, a lot in the health and the fitness space, and a lot of the talk around mental health, a lot of the talk around being physically capable is this confusing like avoidance with enlightenment. So a lot of these people that we aspire to be like, we look up to, you know, essentially that's them falling on their safety behaviours. That's their coping strategy. We give them applaud and a lot of social reinforcement, but you know, they're training 365 multiple times a day. They don't have a social life. You know, they don't have this ability to connect with others outside of what they do. All of their identity is sold into, you know, maybe how they look or what they do as a sport, or, you know, a professional title of sorts. And I wonder how much you feel we confuse that in the health and fitness space.
I think for me personally, what was it called? Me was leaving the military because I believed I'd built myself a name and a reputation and you know, things and a level of I suppose respect. And when I left the military, I wondered if when I left that title and I left that uniform, if I would still be the same person with the same respect. And I hadn't put the two things together as like I am the person. It doesn't matter what uniform you wear or what people call you. You are simply who you are. So for me, like seeing like the authenticity of like you live a certain way all the time. It doesn't matter kind of like whether you have this job or that job or this thing or that thing. You are the prominent trait that go all the way through it, and that's the thing that people get on board with. And I think when it comes to the fitness space, you're absolutely right in terms of, now for me, like I think you know Dan already, but I absolutely hate David Goggins. I don't hate the person. I'm sure he's an absolutely lovely chap.
Please continue.
I'm sure he's a wonderful person. I'm not talking on a personal level. I'm talking more on a professional level, which to me, like he seems like a psychopath, like a sociopath, in the sense that he's gone through a period of like trauma and stuff, and his deal with that is to physically beat himself until he fits whatever mold that he has to fit, or until whatever demon goes quiet, because he's gone to a level of pain and discomfort that all of those sounds disappear behind him. And this idea that you just relentlessly pursue this thing almost without thought. Who's going to carry the boat? Who's going to carry the boat? And you get that chant in your head, that mantra that will overcome any problem, to me seems silly, because I am a veteran equally, same as him. He's obviously a Navy SEAL, which makes him on another level in terms of his military career. But I believe that in understanding veterans in general, it's not a good idea to build yourself that moat around you, where all you've got is one solution. That's your entire dependency. That's your identity, and everyone has to respect it and stay back from it. Because then, if it falls apart, what do you do? And also, what are you? Who it authentically is Goggins, if you know what I mean? Like, other than who's going to carry the boat, I don't know. As a father, as a partner, as a friend, as a businessman, I don't know. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but for me, that kind of mentality that people want to profess in fitness, no days off, grind, 10-figure salaries, all the rest of it. I just think that level of inauthenticity will come to bite you, and it's not the kind of bridge you want to die on.
Is that something that you found, going back to what you said, like you are the person in the uniform, it's not the uniform, so when you left, it's you're the person. Is it something that you found when you left the military, or I would imagine you've changed even more still since then, but did you find that to be true?
No, honestly, like I was in the military and I realized that I'd put so much weight into that. Nobody else had. I was just Richard. But in my head, this was a really big deal, and that's what people respected. They respected the man in the uniform who could perform and who could deliver. When in reality, they just cared about Richard. And like I was saying to you before, I think that's probably one of the most toxic periods of my life, because I'd built this ego that was based on all these things, not realizing that people cared for me with none of that in mind. And here's me putting all my effort into these things that no one cares about, instead of the people that actually cared about me. And then I left the military and realized that, actually that doesn't matter that much. And I find it funny now, because I'm a firefighter. I joined the fire service about 18 months ago. And I'm just a firefighter, I'm at the very bottom of the ladder. And it's weird, because a few years ago, I'd have been sir and saluted everywhere I went. And now I'm literally mopping the floors and making the brews. And that's right, because that's what you have to do when you're on the first rung of this ladder. And it really bothers me not. I mean, I am who I am, and I'm happy whether I'm making a brew or making the decisions of being saluted. One way or another, it's just a thing.
Yeah, it's a first view. Joe, did you want to add anything to that? Because based on military, you might have one or two things to say, possibly.
Yeah, I can see what you mean by that as well, and it's pretty tough. So a bit of a weird one. A few years ago, I got injured. Now I'm still in army, but a few years ago I got injured. As soon as I got injured, I realised that my world had crumbled. I wasn't as solid as I thought I was. I wasn't as strong. The whole culture of me being there forever just kind of like got pulled under my feet. So it's like, right, I need to start focusing on myself now. And then that's when my personal development journey started. But yeah, what you were saying there about like you're just a uniform, and then no one else, you don't see what everyone else can see out of the uniform. Yeah, it totally resonates a little bit as well. So I've got that to look forward to anyway. But in regards to like the learning journey itself, when I leave, I want to be able to do something that I feel comfortable with. And in order to do that, I need to develop myself as a person, whether that's educationally, through like business mentoring, or even like personal relationships and stuff. So a bit of a long way to go as well, but yeah.
I feel like I absolutely I hate these cliches, but this is a good one for me when people say, I mean, I see it in a lot of talks by a lot of the women that I follow. They talk about, use these phrases better than I do, but the phrase unpacking, like unpacking stuff. I find that when I see other military men, especially now from a perspective of being a little bit further away like yourself, like a lot of military men concerned that they have to go on courses to learn about these business skills, and they have to develop themselves in these areas because they're so passionate and so driven about being good at stuff. When almost all the military men that I've worked with in and since leaving have all of this already. And it's not a case of trying to learn these new attributes. It's literally a case of unpacking them from already being in there. And I find that that's some of the self-worth stuff I was talking about. You're so much more than just a uniform. And that doesn't matter if you're working, in the military or any other career for men. The point being is you aren't just this provider. You aren't just this tough guy. You aren't just this thing. Literally, you, like, especially the military though, you have all of these attributes, including the emotional intelligence that you think you don't. You think you're just a brute who answers problems with a punch sometimes, or I certainly did when I was that age. And you're not. You're so much more. It's just finding it out of yourself and being like, oh, there it is. I knew I had it. And as I say, I've opened a business and that's gone well, and been an athlete and now a firefighter. And it's a constant challenge to find these things within yourself, but they are there.
Yeah, and I think there's just an air of caution, when we associate ourselves with any kind of identity, because, as you kind of referred to there, both of you, it's like once that's removed, who are you? And when you've tied your self-worth to that, what happens when it's gone? But one thing that really stood out there was, this whole idea about fitting into certain boxes and being a provider, and there are so many facets to us. But in this era of biohacking, productivity hacking, like self-masturbatory, self-development, like are we infinitely developing ourselves to what end? As I always think, because it is so glorified. Don't get me wrong, I hugely value it. It's something I invest in a lot of time myself. But when we're constantly striving to invest in more courses, often it's just, as you say, unpacking that, tuning it with who we are, what we want that to look like, our values, what we want to carve out of our future. But in this effort to constantly change more, and as we do, we constantly move the goalposts further and further away from ourselves. We don't need to spend more money. We don't need to do more courses. We don't need to invest in, this person, that person, the new fancy whatever it is set up at home. It's just doing the thing.
It's the application.
Yeah,
it's the application.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, if you want to be, you can read 50 manuals on how to, I don't know, tune a car engine. But I tell you what, you won't learn more than tuning several car engines. Go and do a dozen and then find out what you learn. And I think that, again, this navel gazing process of constantly looking into the next book or the next self-help thing or the next self-help thing, take a breather after that book and actually try and apply some of it. I mean, for me personally, like, I've read them all, whether it's like 12 Rules for Life or Extreme Ownership or whatever it is, I've read them all. But to actually apply a handful of them is really, really hard. For me, like from 12 Rules for Life, Jordan Peterson talks about making children that you enjoy spending time with. Man, I could spend most of my life working on that one subject with my son, and my life be massively improved by like that one growth principle. And whether it's extreme ownership and the idea of like the first thing you have to do is be able to see your faults and then accept them as they are without judgment. Like you can't judge yourself if you're going to solve this problem that isn't quite here. You just have to be a little bit objective sometimes. And again, if you just did those two things for all of your life, imagine the person that you could be. And people are reading book after book after book. Apply just one thing, like consistently, and then
That's
see how
become
that
a
affects you.
flex, hasn't it? It's like, you can meditate for 5 minutes. Well, I meditated for an hour this morning. You've got a 5 minute morning routine. Well, I've got a 5 hour
Oh
one.
God.
You've read 10 self-development books. I've read 20, and it's just, it seems like everyone's in constant competition.
Yeah.
And it seems, I think for men especially, it's always productivity driven. Like self-care can't be a bubble bath. It's got to be an ice bath.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not for me.
I got caught in that. I got caught in that trap during lockdown. I started Audible during lockdown, right? So you get the token each month and stuff like that. And then I was like, I just found myself consuming everything. And then there's this thing where I think you buy like 3 extra tokens for like 18 quid or something. So I was doing like 4 a month, and I must have done that for like maybe the majority of lockdown. And I got to the end, and I'm like, they're all saying the same shit. Like, they're all saying the same shit. So not only am I spending the 7 quid a month on Audible, I'm spending the 18 quid a month on Audible. And do you know what? I've just realised I can't remember the last time I logged into it, and the £7 is still coming out of my account.
Yeah.
Right?
And then you actually
you
haven't
said.
applied anything over that period as well. You
I
just
collected all these books, right? I collected all these books, and if anybody goes, have you got any recommendations? I'm like, oh, loads. And then I look and I'm like, that was shit, that was shit, that was shit, that was, it's...
I think when you said before, like having hard conversations, I think if there's one principle for men, like that you could talk about, like I've not put it down to that one simple thing, but having hard conversations is where it's at, because hard conversations aren't always like deep conversations. Having hard conversations are like raising an issue when it starts and not letting it grow to something that becomes me being an ass. I was about to swear then, being very frustrated and angry. Like, something, you know what I mean? And that to me is like, that's growth for me, because previously I watch a problem, I don't want to have a very quick, easy conversation for somebody else. To me, it's a very difficult conversation. Picking someone up, say, I'm sorry, but this is really annoying me, or this gives me some real problems, or you really can't undermine how I'm feeling about this. That's a hard conversation, just to challenge somebody in that initial moment. And I'll let things pass, and eventually I'll be that person the snappy person who's like, I'm sorry, but you've fucking had enough of this. I don't want to be that at the end. I don't want the end. Hard conversations sometimes actually learning to have a very simple conversation and identify something early doors, and it never becomes this difficulty then. And I think that having hard conversations with my children, like my son, is super important. Like, never shying away from that. My father, especially me and my dad, I'm sure you guys, it's a special relationship between a father and a son, and it's often difficult. But having those straight conversations and things like that, I think, are so important to a man and to growth.
As a bit of an admission there, I don't have a relationship with my dad, so I found like that a great difficulty growing up, I guess, in the sense of identity, in that I was kind of basing my own sense of what a man needs to be on things that were celebrated. Like I was a sucker for superheroes, for example, like people that embodied good, and very much got into the archetypal provider, protector. And I think certainly on reflection now, is I was never a sporty kid. I was in a much larger body as a kid, very heavy kid, relied on food quite a lot as an emotional crutch. But my step into fitness, it was about embodying masculinity to a certain degree, because with that came a certain amount of credence, a certain amount of respect, and all of a sudden you're visible for the first time, whereas exactly the same person, and obviously older, wiser, I can reflect on those things now, because that's been a way finding my own way on my own, so to speak. But I do, as a father to a son and a girl and a boy now, but how important that relationship is as the first man in a young girl's life, but also in the formative years, especially in the developmental world. Things have changed. We're moving away from the archetypal man box, if you like, and the stoic, be emotionally suppressed kind of boys. I want a kind, empathetic, but can be assertive, and also all the other facets of masculinity that we should be celebrating as well, because it's often seen as just everything masculine. I say everything, much that is described as masculine and toxic in the same sentence, when actually masculinity and being toxic are two separate things. I don't think it's a helpful descriptor a lot of the time. Don't get me wrong, I definitely think there are some less than healthy things associated with masculinity, but then there's toxic men, there's toxic women. I don't think that's a gender term.
No. I think you're going to say something again there. You wanted to jump in at the same time there.
Oh, I was just going to mention like how difficult it is for when you as a person know when the right time it is to say something or be aware of when something's needed to be said. And I think, Dan, you mentioned about like growing up with your dad and stuff. Like my dad was a weekend dad, so I didn't have like a father figure there to tell me when and is the right time to say and act on stuff. But it's taken a long time, and I assume it's like that for a lot of people as well, like how to react to it or when to react and when to act on stuff like that as well. So that's a tough one as well for just being able to recognise when you should and shouldn't say something at the right time.
I've had this thing recently, and it's not a positive reflection, I don't think. I've tried over the years to try and develop like that. I'm Asperger's, so I've Asperger's, so it's like it's difficult at times. I'm not an emotional, I'm not a machine. I just sometimes like don't connect in terms of how you're feeling, how I'm feeling, not getting that message sometimes. And equally, I don't always connect with my emotional state. It takes me a little while, catch me by surprise. And what I've found recently for me hasn't been the most pleasant, which is to say, people appreciate me when I am explaining my emotions. I am explaining that I am frustrated. I'm explaining I'm stressed or angry. People do not appreciate if I am actually frustrated, stressed, or angry. And the pressure to maintain a level of extremely high composure beyond that of perhaps other people is right now really in my mind this past month, 2 months, and it will be going forwards. How do I move forward and engineer a level of relative calm in the presentation whilst people want me to express a level of emotion in the communication?
I don't think that's realistic. Like that, I would say that's not realistic all the time. Like emotions and feelings and how you respond to things. Sometimes it does happen. Like we've all, I think all of us on this
it's a reaction. You're human. You react sometimes. You don't always respond.
It doesn't matter how much work you've done, how much, I don't know, journaling, whatever, right? How much you've worked on it. Sometimes something's going to get under your skin and you're going to have a innate response that you can't control ultimately there and then. So I would say I completely appreciate what you're saying. I do think there's a need for not just men, everybody to work on that for sure. I think those conversations will get a lot easier. But also sometimes if people are wanting you to not express your emotions but be able to actually talk about them, that's a them thing. That's their expectations that I would say are a bit skewed.
I think it was something I was listening to on Chris Williamson's podcast, and it was something he identified on there as well. It was I can't remember the name of the author that he was with, but they were expressing this, and they were saying like men in general, you know, for example, men crying, for example, we can say that we'd like men to express a level of sadness, except when you poll and psychologically test recipients facing a man who's crying, the outcomes are terrible for that man. And what we can't change is that situation, that if you are going to be successful in certain areas, there are certain emotions that are incredibly unfavorable to your outcomes. And what I'm trying to say here is that, you know, I've grown to a point where now I'll cry at like the Christmas advert on TV. And I've let that become part of my person. But I think that the modern world and the demands that are placed on us are currently unrealistic, and they demand you to be less than that. They say, be authentic, show your emotions. But what they really mean is show the amount that we are happy with.
Yeah, I would agree with that to a certain degree, because I think it's, you know, like you've pinpointed anger there as one particular one. And, you know, anger's not an inherently bad thing. Anger's often the response to injustice of sorts, right? It's when people associate anger with violence, and no one's advocating violence, but often in kind of the phrasing and how that's used, often perpetuated by the media, it is angry man is violent. Whereas you can be angry, you can be violent. They're both separate things, but it's by association, you know, anger's a very helpful, like anything, it's not innately negative, it's not innately positive. I think it's just something to be aware of. And you know, what you mentioned something specifically about these difficult conversations, and I wonder what all your thoughts were in terms of a man-to-man dynamic, because we were talking about being vulnerable there, and I always have this conversation around safety in certain behaviours. So we all know within a banterish environment, where you're the Bantosaurus Rex, the Archbishop of Banterbury, whatever that may be, is that it has a clear trajectory. So you can sit in your own discomfort of, I'm not comfortable with this conversation, I'm not really like feeling this vibe, whatever that may be, this doesn't align with, I'm not into wolf whistling women and all those sorts of things. But it's easier to subtly sit there and not have those conversations, because how that's often met, especially from other men, is you're soft, you're a snowflake. And that comes with uncertainty and, to a certain point, unsafe all of a sudden. For men stepping into, I think necessarily a protector role, but if we were to step into a confrontation in terms of addressing how another man might be speaking to a woman in public, for example, there's all of a sudden a power dynamic at play, which for the general public would be, yeah, men should step in, men should stick up for women.
It's the ability.
It is,
I think what we're trying to find is like
ourselves in harm's way in that situation, and that has to be a consideration, I think.
But I think what we're talking about here is like a divergence, in the sense that there is a chivalrous man and a man that has a role, in my opinion, an old school man, to protect like values like honesty, integrity, someone's self-respect, and those things. And men should step in and say things at times and say, "I'm sorry, but that behaviour isn't okay." I remember a guy, he spat right in front of my mother, and we had a very direct word there. Like nothing came of it, but we had a very direct word. That's not how you act in front of a person that's close to me, let alone a kind of an elderly lady. Do you know what I mean? And I think that those kind of behaviours are ones that we should have. But when we talk about difficult conversations, the difficulty isn't in the bravery to have the conversation. The difficulty is to have a conversation without it keep becoming a confrontation. Because I'm not interested in having a fight in the street. I'm not going to punch. Well, I might do on previous years. But these days, I'm not going to have a fight about a car cutting me up on the road. And I'm not going to have a fight about a million other things. I'm certainly not over someone saying something like a wolf whistle. But it's finding ways to have different conversations where you turn around and say, "Pal, that's just not cool, man." And that's all it needs to be. Difficult is finding a way to keep it diffused whilst being honest, to just say no,
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you're saying. I think it's context specific, right? So it's when's appropriate to do that, I guess. Because I can think of, unfortunately, in my teen years, I can think of a gentleman that did want to, he was between two men actually, intervene and end up with a glass in his face, because that was a courageous thing to do at the time. There's always going to be extreme examples of that. But I think when there's outcry for, I'm totally on board with it, by the way, men I do think should speak up when something is inappropriate. And how we do that is a different conversation altogether, whether that is with confrontation. But there is also a safety element that is really important for other people to consider. Yeah, so when you're asking of that, like, I think of years gone by, and I'm going to make myself sound old now, is, we were cheeky at school, we were like clowns, we'd do the odd prank and stuff like that, but I know of teachers that have been physically attacked by students, so there's lines of intervention. I wouldn't approach a group of teenagers these days, if they were acting out of hand, or, I might report it to the police, depending on how that was. But I'm certainly not going to approach a group of teenagers, because people carry things these days. There is the risk of violence. There is the risk of personal harm, and it's just a different, more. I don't know whether it's different and more scary. I think it's just evolved, and I don't necessarily think in a positive light.
This is something that I battle with a lot, because in years gone by, back when I was way heavier, way bigger, playing American football, all that sort of stuff, before I knew about the heart condition, I would never actively seek violence, but I was comfortable with it. Like where I got brought up in Sheffield, just outside Sheffield in Rotherham, rough place. Again, played high level contact sport my entire life. I was okay with it, and I would never think twice. Now, since the heart surgery, and I have to keep blood pressure low, actively have to keep blood pressure low. I'm on high levels of warfarin, which affect things like my bleeding and bruising and stuff like that. And I'm at elevated risk just in day-to-day life. There's been situations since where, like, I know previously that I would have intervened, done something, said something, and now I can feel myself second-guessing myself. Like, it's like my brain still wants to go, but then also there's this bit of fear that holds me back from doing something, and it's something that I've struggled with since the surgery, and I'm still battling now. Like, I'm like, I would want to get in, but if it was to turn nasty, I'm not as capable of looking after myself and those around me as I used to be. It's really weird.
I think this is interesting, because this to me is at the absolute crux of kind of like where we are, like, and I'm like massive, like broadly for men, like, how do you want us? because I remember a guy passed the entire queue of people that was in. So I just took 2 steps forward and said, get behind. I remember we almost kicked off, and at the time someone was saying, don't leave it, leave it. And I was saying, no, there's a whole group of people here that he's just disrespected. I'm not here for a fight, but I'm also not going to let you wander to the front, get back to the back. And that's the end of that. That's the way I've always been. Except these days, I didn't say that in order to have a fight. I said that in order to say, excuse me, that's where you need to be, please.
Yeah.
Politely. And I'm not here for a fight. And if he said, do you want to go? I'd say, no, you can go to the front if you want, but I'm not going to let you wander past without saying anything, because that's the way that is. And where we are at the moment for men is, I feel like we're really torn in two directions, which is we're expected to have a level of old school chivalry, we're expected to have a level of like protection around people, but we're not sure how to like apply that without infringing on one way or another in the wrong direction. Like, I don't want to look like I'm a thug. And equally, I don't want to look like I'm passive to this problem. I want to be supportive to create an environment that's safe for everybody. But I also kind of know that in some ways, I'm going to have to be a level of confrontation to do it. I just always ask myself, what would my dad do? If I'm absolutely honest with you, what would my dad do? And I'm lucky to have, my father was a policeman. He was very straightforward. And we talk about having difficult conversations. To me, that's what a policeman has to do, because the idea isn't to get punched every time you arrest somebody. The idea is to say, excuse me, I really need you to get in this van. And if you could politely come down the police station with me, that'd be great. Because it's a job, it's not a scrap. And I think that he had the art of having those straightforward, polite conversations really well. He would never let something go past. But I never remember my dad getting into any sort of trouble. And I think that for me to have that there, that's kind of where we're aiming for, if you know what I mean. That's what my aim. But I do think that men are currently put in a difficult place, because you can come across as a real trouble causer. And
part of this conundrum, I find, is like within this conversation around strength in speaking, is that this, I don't know whether it is an expectation, but almost this, men are equipped, I say men, everyone is equipped with this communication skill set, that they can communicate and they can alter that. They have the emotional intelligence to alter that level of conversation, pitch, tone, how they might approach someone, their body language based on the person that might be in front of them. And you get a gauge. We've got all this external programming all of the time. It gives you that inner tuition, if you like. Is like, I know, for example, when I'm in the gym now, as I've been in as many gyms as I've been in over the years, I know when someone's peacocking around me. And I know that if I'm to ask for something, there's a certain way I have to ask for it, to adjust it based on that individual, because it doesn't make no difference to me. Like, I'm not there for ego, but if I want to politely say, have you got many more sets, mate? Something like that, it's different saying, you got more. But there's a certain tone, there's a body language, there's a leaning on the machines, that I know when someone's peacocking around me. And I think that is just this inherent belief that everyone's equipped with this skill set when they're not. Same as speaking, listening. I don't think the issue that we have actually in this narrative is speaking. It's actually going to the appropriately, I don't want to say qualified, equipped ears. How many men know how to passively listen? How many men know the difference between passive and active listening? How many are just waiting for their opportunity to speak? And I have it all the time, I think, when interactions with even people that I guess would class themselves as quite good coaches in the industry, and you're having a conversation with them and you just glaze over. They're just waiting.
You can see the clocks.
Waiting. Yeah, they're not listening. They're just waiting to get, when can I get my in here? Or have I got a one-up story? Have I got a story that makes that one better? And it's an interesting dynamic, because people don't all have the ability to verbalise and articulate exactly what they're experiencing at any one time, let alone base how they're going to alter that on someone else.
I think that for me, there's loads of areas where this is improved, and I would love to think it was in each individual within, like, of us. But like I said, I don't think we're in the majority of men. And it's, you say, like, it's how do you start to have conversations that improve the people around you without necessarily being overly confronting to the point where they just think, I'm bored of you telling me what to do. But I think that's what it is. We just have conversation with my friends. Some of my friends, are not always the best mannered, but they're incredibly well meaning. But they're like, all my friends got good hearts.
Yeah.
But none of them would go out to hurt anybody's feelings. But I'm sure from time to time they do. And it's being the person amongst that group that sometimes goes like, just a quiet word sometimes, where you just say like, man, that was a bit dodgy. Perhaps don't do that again. It's finding, as you say, it's practicing. It's application is what we were saying before. Just having a go with the best interests at heart and as good as you can. Sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes it'll piss somebody off, but it's better than not doing it at all, right?
I think Yeah, I'm quite I say lucky. Maybe lucky, maybe not, because I've created it, right? But call it what you want to call it, echo chamber, the people around me, the people that I work with, the people that I coach, the people that approach me for coaching, they're all would be comfortable to start on this conversation, right?
Yeah.
But then I live in Wythenshawe, which is a really rough area in Manchester. It's like, I think, are you from Manchester, Rick? Like,
I am, but I'm definitely not from Wythenshawe.
right, yeah. So I woke up Wythenshawe High Street.
I have the river just behind us. It's absolutely beautiful.
Well, so I walk up Wythenshawe High Street and I look at the sorts of people that had been brought up in the rough areas, council house and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, we can have this conversation with each other, but there's people out there, men out there, that have probably got no idea. Like, how do you approach that? Like, that's a completely different sort of.
The thing is, though, is good people are good people. It doesn't matter what, and I mean this like deeply. Especially in the fire service, I see people every day from all over Manchester, different kind of people, and the fact that they've not had access to the same opportunities in terms of education, bits and pieces, doesn't stop the fact there are men everywhere who just want to be better, who want to do all the right things, who want to be great dads, who want to be great best mates. And I think that all it needs to be is the heart needs to be in the right place, and they'll find a way of accepting it, as difficult as it is. At jiu-jitsu, and I have a couple of friends in there, and one of them has come from a background of a rough upbringing, a couple of difficult choices as a teenager, and all of a sudden, wow, that guy's got a name that's pretty big to live up to. And we were talking one time about how his life turned around, exactly that. Like, he finds a nice girl, has some children, life develops, and his progress is astonishing. And he constantly self-berates him for not speaking as well or not having this background. And I wish I could find a way to just say to him, it just doesn't matter, because he himself, his heart's in the right place, his head's in the right place. And really, like we were just saying a minute ago, you can read 1,000 books and apply none of it, and you can be just as in the dark as everybody else. Or you could just take that one thing on board and apply it with a level of real deep authenticity and be a vastly better person as a result. And that is literally what he is. He's a great person to be around. I think I'm sorry, I went on a rant there, I'm sorry, but I feel so deeply about it.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I think, in terms of emotional intelligence, emotional intelligence is more movable than people attribute so much success to IQ, for example, which is there's a lot of facets involved with that. And it's, as you say, good people are just good people, and I think you get a good gauge of people's intentions through conversation with them, and equally the other way around. You can be super educated, you can be super wealthy, you can have all of the wealth, fame, etc., and be a really shitty human. These things aren't inherently one or the other, but as you say, good people are just good people. I think it's, as you say, like the people trying to develop those things are just trying to be better. And we're not always going to get it right. We're going to fall on our faces. We're going to make crass, inappropriate jokes sometimes. We're going to reflect someone's thoughts back to them, and they're going to be like, no, I didn't fucking mean that.
Yeah.
We're going to get slips, but, this is an ongoing process. And I think much of the stuff we talk around health, fitness, and mental health is something that often crops up on these conversations, whether it's these kind of conversations or my coaching conversations. I think one of the misconceptions in the social media space in general is that everything is towards a definitive outcome. We reach this point of self-actualization where we're floating above the ground, ready to impart our wisdom onto everyone else, but the reps don't stop.
No.
That work is ongoing. If you have moved from one place to another, that's unlikely to get you to the next place, because it doesn't stop. And with a lot of these support pillars that we have in place, especially in terms of maintaining our health, mental health and our physical health, is you stop doing those things and stuff quickly unravels.
I think
you've got to keep doing it.
That is so true. It's about the gym training, but it's about, as you say, these mental muscles we're talking about as well. Just as much as you will atrophy when you stop applying that physicality, so will you with like compassion and empathy and the rest of it. I don't for a second think that there isn't a day where the Dalai Lama wants to tell someone to go and stuff it, because you know what I mean. Like, I don't care how enlightened you get, unless you practice like repeatedly doing that thing of like deep breath, think. What are they showing me? What do I want to show back? Like, you won't be strong in that area. And it's something that's a lifelong task in the same way as fitness, isn't it? And it frustrates me in mental health and in the kind of like the well-being kind of area. People sell like that. Here's your answer. Here's your token to make it better. In the same way that in fitness, do the exact same thing in fitness, where they're like, oh, now you've lost 20 pounds, so you're not fat anymore. Ha! You're fixed. And you think to yourself like, well, either that or they've got a world of different problems. But I think that like, I think for me, I think the fact the wellness space is growing is good. The fact the mental health space is growing for me is actually, I'm apathetic about it, because I think more people are talking about it and less people are providing actual kind of like practicable, solutionable answers or real care. But the fitness space a little bit worries me, in the sense that it is driven towards a little bit more social media. So it is a little bit more maybe like physical outcomes rather than like self outcomes. I worry that people learn how to, I don't know, how to train in such a way that they look like they're good at training in the gym, rather than like truly understanding like the movements and stuff. Because when I look at elite bodybuilders, I look at people who truly understand like physiology, anatomy and mechanics, and they understand how this affects this and so forth. And that's how they shape these bodies that, I'm not in bodybuilding, but I still find it incredible. What I don't find incredible is that people preparing people for shows where they're not going through that real understanding of a body, and they're not even training in order to find that self-development and self-awareness. They're training because they want a photo on a stage. They're training because they want to lose a given amount of weight, or they want to control a given factor of their life. And the more the fitness industry moves towards that, like the more frustrated I become. I'd rather go to the 1950s, let's stand in 5 rows in white shorts and a white vest, and we'll do star jumps together, we'll do burpees together and press ups together, because at least I understood that.
There's such a dissociation between, well, health is usually subjective, but the epitomized, pedestaled version of health and fitness, which is largely leveraged to capitalize on people's insecurities, isn't health in any shape or form. But
Yeah.
that is the overriding message constantly. And when you talk about less tangible things like, oh, I feel amazing, my sleep is incredible, I'm the better partner, you know, I've got that promotion at work, I'm the most happy and fulfilled I've ever been. People are like, well, it doesn't look as good as this bloke in his pants.
This is exactly it. I can't show it on Instagram.
You know, and this takes, again, this inner discernment that people need to, because a lot of the stuff we talk about is just scratching the surface, and it is kind of shallow at times, but it's incentivized because it sells. There's nothing to put people off of promoting this message, because for example, I used to, not knowing better at the time, is like photo shoots and comp preps, and having been involved in physique sport myself, that stuff sold, and it sold quickly. Like from a financial standpoint, it was worth it. But was I a better coach at that time 10 years ago? Probably not. But
I'll tell you now,
success of.
I'm really struggling at the moment, and this is just a personal, it's genuine. Open up for a second. I'm struggling with my social media at the moment, in the terms of, I used to really feel very strongly about my own social media. It grew on the basis that I trained with a level of intensity that I truly think was at the time very special. It was a professional athlete. I was dedicated to the way that you should be if you want to be a professional athlete. And I think that's initially what grew my Instagram. People were attracted to somebody that was so intensely about something, you couldn't not be a bit like, wow, that motivated me to do that tomorrow. And then I had depression in 2018, and I had to take tablets and go through a whole process and back off my training and the rest of it. And I started to talk about my mental health. And I didn't talk about it in terms of trying to teach anybody anything. I'd talk about having a bad day. And I talk about what my day looked like today and what I could do tomorrow. And it was just, sometimes I'm sure that it was a bit of a train wreck, but it was honest, really honest. And then I went through that period, and then my Instagram really grew. And then I'm at a period now where I'm very content in life, and things are going kind of well, but at the same time, I'm not training to the same level of intensity I was. I'm 39 this year. I'm no longer really competing. And as a result, what happens is if I put a topless photo up from my holiday to the beach, I get like 5,000 likes on it. And then if I put something up that I'm passionate about my training, like nothing happens. I get no response to that. And it's frustrating, because I know the growth of my social media now has swerved a little bit, and people have moved. A lot of people have arrived because they like the aesthetics and stuff. And you get that draw, that I feel like draws the need to, well, post something, because then it helps more followers, and it helps more this, and it'll help pay the bills, and that'll pay my mortgage, and this will pay this. But at the same time, like, I don't want to, so I'm not going to. But the point is, it's a literal battle, because you can feel the pressure of aesthetics. You can feel the pressure of, like, give the people what they want. But in reality, you're not feeding them what they want. It's not true. I'm not on the beach every day. I don't walk around my shirt every day. I don't feel super confident every day. Sometimes I want to post about, like, a perfectly ordinary day, and I do. And I'm aware that it's just going to go and hit the deck. But you have to try and maintain that. Sky stopped wearing makeup on her Instagram a while ago, and she stopped using like filters on herself, and she stopped doing this. And I think that in order for her to be to take herself seriously, that's something that she did. And now I'm trying to do it. I appreciate how hard it is to not just like try and look like a baller on Instagram because all the guys want to show off the newest thing they've got. So I definitely feel that, but I wouldn't say I have any answers to it or any advice to it. It's
No,
kind of a
thank you
process
for
I'm going through
sharing
myself.
that. Yeah, I think that's a genuine, if we're all being honest, that's a struggle everyone has because if we base our perception of the world and reality on what we're most exposed to is we all existed before social media. Future generations won't know anything apart from it. And you maybe compared yourself to, I don't know, like the kid down the road that had a better mountain bike than you. And like now there's 5 million kids with better mountain bikes than you. And if you allow me to go off on a little bit of a tangent, because this is something I often think about, because a lot of, I guess, like the pseudo success that people have aspirations are looking up to is there's a few facets of conversation we're always missing out on, and that is privilege. Essentially people do have a leg up. I'm not saying that is the answer to all. There's hard work in there as well, but sometimes there's leg ups that the people don't acknowledge. There's survivorship bias. They are the outliers. They are the 10%. And there's just pure luck. If you were set up your Instagram account, was it 2000?
God, I don't even know.
Whatever that may be,
Knows.
and you essentially built hundreds and thousands of followers of rig pics, right? You've cultivated a certain audience. Now you're not going to lose all of them. You might lose a proportion of them, but a lot of the people that are now like, well, this is about how I've accumulated this number of followers because I'm passing on mindset, or I'm passing on, personal development, or I'm passing on all these other things. Is yes, but that is still on this foundational part of rig pics. It's aesthetics. That's what gives people speaking opportunities. And I'm not naive in how I've had a leg up in this as well, because when I was a sponsored athlete, that led me on to my first speaking gig, and not because I deserved it any more than I did before, but because everyone I aspired to be like, that's what gave them the opportunity. So I felt I needed to do it. It was monkey see, monkey do. They were doing photo shoots, they were doing physique competitions. That's what I did, and that gave me my first speaking gig, and that went into more. And I did, I got I was a regular columnist for Muscle and Fitness for a little while, but I was super proud of my words. But then I can say this on here, I don't care. The editor at the time just was interested in, have I got any latest pictures? But a lot of my friends at the time and a lot of my peers in the industry are like, oh, you're in Muscle and Fitness. It's like, yeah, but did you read my article?
Yeah.
And I'd be writing something about how cheat meals aren't a helpful phrase to use. The next page is another athlete with like their favourite cheat meals. Like, oh, well, this doesn't align with me. But it just becomes so false. And I don't think I'm providing the answers there, just more like airing some of the grey areas that people don't always acknowledge. And I think just plain luck is a lot of the people that you aspire to be like, they've got there out of luck. Or they're one of the outliers. Don't think you're a failure because you don't fall into that 10%.
It's for Instagram. I've literally said this a million times, like, it could get deleted tomorrow. I could have been hacked. If I was hacked like 3 years ago before you could recover your account, it'd all be over.
Do you remember when everyone lost it for 2 days? WhatsApp and Instagram.
Yeah. Like, and I mean, it sounds really weird, but I'm just another middle-aged man, frankly, who just does burpees, and it's as simple as that. And even like the point of the whatever rig I've ever built, like I'm getting old. I'm physically getting old. Like there's a point at which this all stops. Okay, there's a point at which nobody cares anymore. Everyone's forgotten and it's gone. And I'm okay with that like long process, and that's just how it works. And I'm okay with that. What I find, as you say, I acknowledge the luck that I've had in having it and the benefits that it's given me, especially when it comes to paying the bills and doing stuff like that. But I think that to not acknowledge the fate played a certain part is a dangerous game to play, especially when I see that in other coaches where they've had particular circumstances arise and they fail to acknowledge that the special kind of nature of how it's come about. Because I think that if you there's a lot of coaches out there, and they're the ones that I want to speak to a lot, really. Kind of in my gym, for example, I have a couple of coaches in there who don't have my say Instagram, but they are well known as deeply in my area and within CrossFit now, because they've cultivated their reputation not online but in real life. There's a couple of coaches that I could name, from across the years, who don't even think they even have social media, but you'd know who they were if you were an hour in CrossFit, because that's the way that they've built themselves. And I love that. Like, I have my Instagram, but I also feel that sometimes it can be a little joke for those guys because they're like, well, you've got Instagram, so thingy. And you know what? It's a fair card to play.
Yeah.
But because I respect what they've done in a box with none of that stuff, they just applied knowledge day in and day out to a point where they have a full client list, a mortgage that's paid, holidays every year, and children that get lovely Christmas presents. You know, you don't have to have 100,000 followers to be vastly more successful than half the people that I know that have 100,000 Instagram accounts. Because there's a lot of people that I know have 100,000 plus Instagram accounts and knobheads, and they're not that happy. So I think that if I could burst that one bubble straight away, you know, just be successful in your area, in your gym, with your friends and with your family, and also have a clientele that are super, super stoked and happy to refer you to somebody else, because that's genuine success.
Yeah. What is success to you? I think living smaller is something that, you know, genuinely, if I made an extra 5 grand a month, not that I'm going to bring up like money and stuff like that. To me, it's like, I don't know, I've always felt there's a bit of a crass conversation. I don't know whether it's my upbringing. My mum was like, you don't talk politics, you don't talk money.
Yeah.
It's never a conversation I've had. But my life wouldn't change too much. Like I take my oldest to and from school every day. I go jiu-jitsu most mornings every day. I have a day off a week with my youngest. Like, we go on a family holiday. I don't really want much more. That's my version of success. That's not to say that should be everyone's, but I think when we base it on someone else, it's, you know.
I'll ask a question to you three, because it's a question that I was asked and it genuinely changed my outlook and has done since. I won't forget it. I was on a walk with my friend Matt, and my friend Matt asked me, what would have to happen for you to consider yourself well off? What would like financial success look like to you?
I can answer that because I've thought about it recently.
Go on. No, I'm happy. I'm genuinely interested. I think it's a phenomenal question. It's changed my life.
Just not having to worry about paying the bills. That's it. That's bare minimum for me. Like, you know, if we get a family holiday a year, fortunately, you know, there'll be times where that's more possible than others, but I think if you're in a position where you're not worrying about bills, you're not worrying about food, you can go out wherever you want to eat at a restaurant every now and again, not worry about what that bill is going to come in. Personally, I don't want much more than that. It's not like a car or anything like that. It's that's it for me. You know, again, I'm not saying that should be what everyone else is, but it's the bare minimum.
Yeah, it's the same for me. Like my business is going well, and for me, it's like being able to live not above my means, but without having to worry about, can I do this? So, like for example, when we were in Dubai last week, could I take Maria out and to a nice restaurant and not have to check my bank balance and be like, oh, you can't start? Like, I don't want tons of stuff. I would like to be able to look after the people around me and treat the people around me a little bit more, maybe. So maybe I do want more than where I am now. But what I was saying, I went to Dubai, and one of my best friends lives there, and he said, would you move here? And I said, no, because I would never want to become numb to this. So, so the lifestyle and the money, I would never want to become numb to that. Like, it was nice going, it was great coming back. That sort of thing. Like, I don't ever want it to lose the novelty. So maybe a little bit like more than where I'm at now, but for those reasons, to be able to go and do that nice holiday, treat my mum and dad for the birthday, that sort of stuff.
I think mine would be pretty similar, but if you would have asked me that question 10 years ago, my answer would have been totally different. I think it depends on your situation and the context behind it. But yeah, financially free for me would be not worrying about the bills and being happy with what I've got on the bank, knowing full well I'm not going to run out if I do want to do something.
For sure.
But it's interesting because before I got into coaching and before I got into being self-employed and learning how to actually make money, I was a bartender. I DJ'd as well, but I was a bartender, and I was earning just enough to pay the bills, as in bare minimum, just enough to pay the bills. And I was at that time, I was like, oh well, this is me, this is my life. I'll make do. Never thought that more was achievable. When more then started to become achievable, the bar raised a little bit and it raised a little bit. And I'm very wary that I don't want to get caught into that trap of it continuously being like, right, I want more, I want more, I want more. So like when I was earning a lot less money, I was like, I'm fine. Same as when I was 150 kilos. I'm like, I'm fine. Like, I'm good. And it's like, no, it's okay to want more, but just make sure that you keep a lid on it. I
think I went backwards. I found it humbling. I went backwards. I think when I was younger, I had a couple of sports cars that were quite expensive. At one point, I had a wardrobe with new T-shirts with tags on. and I used to like to wear brand new clothes on a night out, which is absolutely ludicrous. I look back at that and I just think like, what a shallow existence to live in, where you're like, I don't want to go out, I haven't got new clothes to wear. And I look back and I also wonder why I'm so poor now. But no, but like I had literally the trappings of doing incredibly well, except the exchange that you have to give, the time and the application and the stress. And also the care that anyone's bothered what T-shirt you're wearing on a night out. What an egotist! Like no one cares. And then interestingly, my friend asked me that question, and we were talking about it. And his answer was, when I just go to Tesco because we need a big shop, and he said when I just pick the food up that is required in the shelves, and I don't go, that one's 165, that one's 185, that one's a bit heavier, I'll go with that one. And he said, it's not stress. He said, that's not an issue. I don't lose sleep over which packet of oven chips to buy. But I do go around the shop and I think to myself, I probably must make the right options here. And he said, the day that I could go around the shops and buy the food that I'd simply like to eat with my missus and with my family, then I think I have absolutely made it. And I thought on that for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it stays with me now, and it's drawn me right back, I think, really down to like what I think is a really important stuff. And I know it sounds really silly, but I think that the home and the heart of every family is mealtime. It's food. I think you make a lot of your family there, and I think that he nailed it, and he exposed a lot of my bad behaviors, in the sense that I would have been happy to not eat quality foods and not look after myself in a good way and not think of myself particularly well, as long as on the outside you saw me driving the car and you saw me wearing those clothes. And I think that was an exposing conversation that came just at the right time, and I don't think I'll ever forget it.
That's what me and Maria have experienced, is better coffee and better shower gel. Like better toilet paper. Like, that's it. It's like
better softener. They're all valuable things.
It's not flashing your money on all this stuff. It's like triple ply toilet paper. Have you ever tried that shit?
That's exactly it, isn't it? And I think a lot of these things is understanding the cost involved. So sure, there is more money to be made, but then if that's the detriment to other things that you value, like family time or downtime or time away and all those other things, is like, when's enough? Gents, we've chatted for ages. I'm hugely grateful for your time. I'm going to let you have some of your evening back. I very much appreciate you giving up your time. I appreciate the candid conversations and the personal experiences. Anyone else that's watched, please do share this with people you might find helpful, and thank you guys for being the change that we all want to see.
Thank you guys, really appreciate it. It's been a good chat. I feel great for it.
Take care, gents. Thank you. Speak to you soon.